Hey friends, welcome back to Bible Fun with the Duns. Today you get two, so I guess we're doing better.
Two Duns.
This week is we're making it.
Yeah. This week we've had a lot of ball games and a lot of just late nights.
But we are the champions, my friends.
Oh, we did win.
Yes.
The big one. We lost the others, but the big one.
Yeah.
Okay, good stuff. Let's go.
Jed's team won the soccer championship.
Yeah.
And they had an undefeated season, and then John is manager on the middle school soccer team, and they only had one real game. They did a scrimmage where John got to play Monday, and that was super fun. And then they played their first game last night, which we're just managers, so we don't play necessarily, even though we're trying to.
So, Luke chapter 14.
Stop it. They like to know. I pretend y'all want to know. Luke chapter 14. I'm just going to run us through it real quick. So we start with the healing of a man on the Sabbath. The Bible tells us this man had dropsy, and turns out, with a quick Google, that is like swelling, edema. So he has this issue, which can be a really big problem, and Jesus just so happens to decide to heal him on the Sabbath. So he helps this man, but also there's so much purpose. Nothing is wasted in any of Jesus's miracles, any of his actions. And so he's teaching and preaching to the Pharisees, who were still like, rule number 7, they are not looking to the heart and the point. They're missing the point of what it is to be a follower of God. And they're still worried about their rules.
Can I make comments as we go through?
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to point out, like in this beginning, it says as it happened, he went into the house of one of the rulers of the Pharisees to eat bread on the Sabbath day. So just kind of set this passage up in your mind, knowing that as Jesus had problems in like interpersonal problems with people around him.
We just talked about this somewhere. Not you?
No.
Okay.
So he had problems with the Pharisees, he had problems with the scribes, and he had problems with the lawyers. The Pharisees, he had problems because they were hypocrites. The scribes, who were like prideful of their own intellect, and the lawyers, who were prideful of their own interpretation of being able to really kind of control with power, using the goodness of God's word in order to kind of be more of a burden than it is a help. But when it starts out by saying that Jesus went to one of these guys' houses, just remember that Jesus willfully chose to spend time with people who really didn't like him, and that he knew that were against him. And so you got to beware against like living your lives insulated from anybody that's going to disagree with you and that maybe not believe what you believe. And so Jesus is teaching us here about the kind of the ultimate hospitality of not just tolerating our enemies, but like embracing them to try to give opportunity. Yeah.
So the next section is the parable of the wedding feast. And in the next few sections, I kind of see a common theme of humility and this idea of the upside down kingdom. It looks completely different from what the world tells us is important or how you should be. And so the wedding feast, this is where Jesus teaches on like, don't just assume you're going to be in the place of honor. Instead sit in like the commoner's spot, and then if they want to move you to a place of honor, then it's a big compliment. And there's a proverb that says, let other people praise you and not your own mouth. And that kind of reminds me of these really good teachings of just how to do life. That's a common basic humility teaching that we all should know.
Yep. I think what we take away from there is Jesus is doing soul work. He's doing inner work on these while he's having conversations. Because if you think about that, the man with dropsy in the previous section, this guy is on the scene. They're waiting to see if Jesus is going to heal him on the Sabbath, which is their major like point of contention with Jesus. That's where they're trying to attack.
And they want him to, so they can
they want him to attack. But here's the thing. If they're using this guy as bait, then their wickedness in not caring about this poor man's plight is worse than their perceived action that Jesus is doing against operating on the Sabbath day. And then he's pointing out like their own failure to understand where they're at in the order of this. So he talks to them about
highly of themselves.
That's right. Because he talks to them about where they choose to sit when they're at a meal. So the Jewish writings, the Talmud, says that a couch that held 3 persons, the center was the highest place of honor, the right side was the second highest place, and the third, the left side was the third, like, most important. And so everybody wanted to be in the center or at the right hand. And so these guys, and you'll even catch this in like the wedding feast, these guys assumed, oh, we're at the right hand, we're at the center, we're at all of these. And what Jesus is exposing is, hey, the way you're treating people and the way you're living with hypocrisy, a disagreement with the inner life and the outward behavior, it's exposing you're not just on the right or the left, you're way over there. You're the guys that in the story of the wedding feast that you've been invited for hundreds of years. You've been invited into the feast of the Lord's house, and you are actively coming up with excuses to keep your own self out of it. And so these Pharisees had exalted themselves, assuming that they held important positions in the kingdom. And in our days, we don't look at them with respect. Instead, we view that they're the opposition. They thought they were the heroes of the story, but they're really the enemies in the story, which is, I think, they would be shocked to even consider about themselves.
Okay, the next section is the parable of the great banquet, which is the story of the Bible in itself, the story of what God has done to pursue his people. And they're saying they're having this banquet, this party, and they're inviting specific guests, and none of them want to come. And then so they extend the invitation to more people. And what we see is this picture of, remember, God comes first to the Jew, and then, he's trying to get their attention in all the ways, sending judges, sending prophets, and they continue to reject him. And so he extends his invitation and shows who he is to the Gentiles. And you see it go to the ends of the earth, to where it affects even us. And so that's what this is a cool picture of.
Yeah, you got to remember also in Scripture, banquets are kind of symbolic of like heaven. They're used to talk about the kingdom. And so you'll even see like the marriage supper of the Lamb in Revelation. Jesus uses banquet terminology
we gonna party.
to talk about that. He talks about this party. So God has prepared this great banquet in heaven, and these Jewish people assumed that they had already confirmed their spot in heaven, that they had already confirmed their invitation. The problem was these guys had constant reasons why they would not respond. Now understand this, none of them had valid reasons. They had excuses. And so they weren't coming into the kingdom, but they had all made their choices. They assumed if anybody gets to go to heaven, it's us. But their assumptions are very much wrong because their lives are very much distant.
That's right. And then this last little section is the last part I'm going to talk about. The cost of discipleship. This is pretty interesting to me. The way Jesus presents the gospel to the people, he straight tells them the truth from the beginning. He has all these crowds interested in following him and witnessing the miracles. But remember, just because they see those miracles doesn't mean they have heart change. And so Jesus is telling them, like, they're literally following him, but he's saying, if you really want to be a follower, you have to take up your cross daily. You have to die to yourself every day. It's not this easy thing that you're going to just decide lackadaisically. And I think this goes with that idea of humility that we've seen all throughout this chapter. Following Christ is the upside down kingdom. Remember, it starts with Jesus' Sermon on the Mount and the Beatitudes. It starts with that, blessed are the poor in spirit. You have to recognize that you have a need. You have to recognize that turns out I don't have everything I need. I'm not self-sufficient. And you even have to choose Christ over yourself, not just one time, but over and over and over again as a follower.
Yeah. And the salt of the earth stuff, Jesus says, look, He says, you got to figure out how far you're going to follow me, because you can be bland in how you do it, but what is that going to accomplish? Or you can be spicy, and so you can be full of flavor. You are spicy, and so he's telling them really they have to count the cost in this. He's urging his people to think through the high cost of what it is to follow him, because Jesus says that if one wants to be his disciple, they must be prepared to choose him over every one of life's closest relationships and over everything else. And what's more is that he must choose Jesus even over life itself. Mm-hmm. And so this is the high cost of following Jesus. And this is why many people didn't follow him, kind of much after this. That they're going away because they go, the cost is just too much. Mm-hmm. We liked it when it was just bread. We liked it when it was just miracles. We liked it when it was good stories and good sermons. But when it starts to cost me something, then I got to decide if I'm in or out on this. And so I think this is an invitation. It says, hey, the cost is high, but it is worth it. But count the cost. That's right. And so that's what I got out of it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed that, and we'll wrap up the week tomorrow with Luke chapter number 15. All right, see you then.
Bye.